So another way to store veggies, especially cut vegetables that you know you're going to lose soon, is in a plastic container like this. And this is really handy because it's like all contained. If you're, using like chopped vegetables, they can be a little awkward to put in a bag because they're kind of all over the place. And so a little container like this can work really well. And so the problem with cut veggies is that it increases their surface area, right? So when this was a whole Brussels sprout, it only had this much surface area exposed to the air. As soon as you cut it, this goes for carrots, this goes for anything. As soon as you cut it, suddenly you have twice as much surface area for it to lose moisture. So you want to keep these in a moist environment just like the other ones. So if you know you're going to be using them quickly, you can put them in a little plastic container like this, which makes it much easier to keep track of them. I prefer the bags for large veggies because there's no air circulation in this little box, but because it's sealed, you don't need to add extra moisture. You don't need to add water, you don't need to add a wet paper towel, because I'm not sure if you can see, but there's condensation on the inside of this container here. And that's because there's a little bit of moisture in these guys, and since this is a closed environment, it's holding on to that moisture all by itself. You don't need to add any more, it's totally fine. And in fact, adding moisture will potentially cause these to mold because there's already so much moisture in the veggies, and with no air circulation, it stays put in here. And so, you don't want to keep them in here for very long, a couple days max, because without the air circulation, they'll do funky things, the bottoms will get, if they're leaves, they'll get wilty and a little slimy. You'll notice that they just get a little sticky and weird. But what you can do to extend their life is every once in a while, every day or two, take out your container if you know you're not going to use it that day and just open it. Just kind of give it some air circulation, just for a second or two. It lets moisture out, lets fresh air in, and then you just seal it again and throw it back in the fridge. It's totally easy. So there's one more vegetable that I want to cover. It's not really a vegetable, but it's still, veggie-like, so we're gonna work with it today. So we've got mushrooms. Woohoo! They're all over the place. And if you notice they're rolling all over the place now, they do the same thing in the fridge. They're kind of a pain to store sometimes. Mushrooms are fungus and they have special needs, right? So you do not want to add extra moisture to these because they will get slimy and they will do really bizarre things. Slimy mushrooms are not good. I wouldn't eat them. They're unpleasant. They're just icky and weird, right? So these guys have their own special needs. So because they don't need extra moisture, you do not want to store them in plastic and you do not want to wash them ahead of time. In fact, I do not recommend storing cut mushrooms because they tend to do, they absorb moisture in weird ways and the slices can kind of bulge out and look weird. So I store them whole and I put them in a place where they have no added moisture and they have extra air circulation, more so than the rest of these veggies. So rule number one, do not store wet mushrooms. Do not wash them before you store them. Do not put a wet paper towel in with them. Just leave them alone relatively dry. And these guys we store in a paper bag. Super easy. You just open the bag and throw the little buggers in, and that's it, really, it's easy. Paper has it's porous, air passes in and out of the paper, but it doesn't allow that much air in and out so that it's not they're just sitting out on the counter. Because if you leave mushrooms out, if you just leave them sitting there, they dry out and they get a weird skin, elephant skin on the surface. And the reality of your refrigerator is refrigerators are climate controlled. They're very dry. They're meant to be dry. And that's actually why they come with a crisper. The crisper, what it does is it has a special chamber in there that controls the amount of atmospheric moisture in the air in that area, right? Your refrigerator as a whole is super dry. So if you put just plain raw veggies that are not wrapped in your refrigerator, they're gonna dry out like that. Same with mushrooms. So you want to put anything that's super sensitive that needs moisture in the crisper, in the bottom of your fridge, or wherever it happens to be in your personal refrigerator, because anything left out in the open will dry out. Mushrooms, because they don't want too much moisture, they're a little bit of an exception to the rule. So we're going to throw these guys in the bag. So they have a little bit of porous air circulation in and out of the bag, and we're just going to fold the bag. Just like that. And then we're going to put this just in the regular part of the fridge where the milk is, where, the eggs are, just, in the open part of the fridge, because these guys don't like extra moisture, you don't want to put them in the crisper because they will get slimy. There's extra moisture that's held in that crisper area, and fungus, mushrooms, that sort of thing, they don't really like that. They need to be a little bit moist and a little bit dry. And the best way to manage that balance is to put them in a paper bag that is just folded over so it has some air circulation here, and just to put it in the regular part of your fridge. One more quick note on carrots and celery and other veggies that tend to get bendy when they've dried out. Like I know you've seen carrots that are so like limp you can like tie them in a knot. Celery does the same thing. It's really obnoxious because like who wants to eat like a flaccid carrot, right? It's kind of gross. So what I do is I take a plastic container like this and I fill it with ice water. And then I cut the veggie in half to make sure it fits, fill up the container with the vegetables, and then I put the lid on so it's completely sealed so nothing spills because open containers in the fridge are just ridiculous. And then I put it in the fridge overnight. And what happens is those vegetables like absorb all the extra water and it's amazing. They go from being a totally limp, sad little carrot, like the Eeyore of vegetables, to being like, woohoo, I am mega carrot. And you really can't beat it. Like I've actually saved carrots that people were gonna toss and they're like, those are garbage. Like overnight in the fridge in ice water, like they become super crisp, like you just pulled them out of the ground. It's actually an incredible saving tactic. I've saved a lot of vegetables that way. It works for celery, works for carrots. I've done it for green beans. You gotta be a little careful when you start getting into like greens territory because they can absorb too much water and actually become waterlogged and kind of gross. So if you're doing it with green beans, like I would maybe only do it for an hour or two. But if you're dealing with like really strong vegetables like carrots, beets, celery, it happens to work really well with celery too, even though it's not a root vegetable. It's a great tactic for saving dead limp vegetables.